So there's a lot of perception for people who are returning back to India that the corporates will keep you targets and then you will be pressurized to work and lots of other things. There is a common worry for people who are thinking of coming back to India. The biggest problem in UK and even US, for example, is accessibility. If you want to see a specialist, you got to wait for a few months to see a specialist. And that makes it very, very frustrating for people who want to access health into the system at all. And he was struggling. So he was not excelling his studies, he was not coping with the friends, and so it was a real struggle. But we were pushing him, saying that this is a good school, you have to adjust and other things. Though then we realized, well, it's not going very. When I was planning to come back to India, I was kind of thinking what could the problems or the challenges which I can face, would be facing. And I thought I covered almost everything, the task, except one thing which was a surprise.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Desi Return. Today I'm excited to have Dr. Kiran Peddi on our show. Dr. Kiran Peddi did his MBBS in India and went to UK for further studies and worked in UK for close to 11 years, including the studies, and spent a year in Australia before deciding to move back to India. He has been living in India for last 14 years and he's our first guest with the doctor profession, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion, especially what goes like for someone who did their studies in India on like when they could qualify to be in a profession abroad, and some of the challenges involved when doctors are thinking about moving back to India. So a lot of insights, a lot of discussion to look forward. So with that, welcome Dr. Kiran Peddi to the show.
Thank you, Avinash. First of all, thanks a lot for having me on your show. And when I learned about Desi Return, I thought it's an exciting idea, and you've been doing a lot of fantastic work. So I thought of volunteering for the same.
Great. Thank you very much for that. So let's start with a bit about your background and, and what made you to go abroad. So let's start with that.
Well, Avinash, I mean, as you rightly said, I done my graduation from, part of it was from Usmania. First year of medicine was in Usmania, then I moved to Warangal and completed my MBBS from Warangal. So when I was finishing my graduation and obviously wanted to do something different to routine post-graduation. So at that time, not much of awareness was there when thinking about doing post-graduation training abroad. And the options were US or UK. So to be honest, my intention was always to come back to India at some point and work here. So I thought from that perspective, UK would be better choice. And also there is a perception among medical community that the UK training is slightly better than US training, no offense, but that's for the kind of perception we had in our community at the time. So decided to go to UK for pursuing post-graduation and then return back. So the idea was initially to stay in UK for 5 years or so. So not much of orientation was there. So whenever somebody is wanting to go to UK, and I'm sure a lot of doctors are aware of this, you need to pass an exam called PLAB. So once you pass PLAB, you get an eligibility to go and work in UK. And nowadays, the PLAB is being conducted in India itself, in Hyderabad and in many other places. But in those days, you have to physically go to UK to write the exam. So myself and a couple of my close friends, we decided to go to UK to write the exam. So there was hardly any awareness and there was no internet at the time. I'm talking about 96, 97. So we landed in UK and then a lot of difficulties before taking the exam itself, because to start with, we could not sort out an accommodation for almost a couple of weeks or 3 to 4 weeks, proper accommodation. So once we sorted the accommodation, then not much of time for preparing for exam. Then finally, to cut the story a little short, finally passed the PLAB exam and then took a job in 98. That was my first job in UK. So when I say job, in UK, postgraduate training is kind of staggered at the time, not as streamlined as it is now. So if you want to pursue post-graduation in UK, you need to apply for jobs in different hospitals. It is like a self-paced training program. So you need to select a hospital, you need to select a department where you apply and get trained yourself. So once you complete 2 years of training, you are eligible to take the postgraduate exam that is called MRCP. So I passed my MRCP in 2000. Then again, I wanted to pursue post graduation. I wanted to pursue super specialty. So the options were by heart, I was interested in cardiology or gastroenterology. But again, getting into these two top branches in medicine was almost next to impossible because a lot of bias in selection process and a lot of what do you call uh, I wouldn't say favorism, but the local graduates are obviously preferred over foreign graduates. So it is not easy to get into these specialty. So again, I tried for a couple of years doing experience jobs in gastroenterology. Then finally got a place in gastroenterology. So any super specialty training program in UK is for 5 years. And for example, if somebody is pursuing a career in India, they do MBBS, they do MD for 3 years, then do specialization, for example, gastroenterology for another 3 years. But in UK, you do post-graduation for 2 to 3 years, then you do specialization for 5 years. It's almost like a double DA. At the end of super specialty training program, you will be awarded what we call CCT. So when somebody got CCT in a particular specialty, that means they have undergone 5 year training program, structured training program in UK, and only people with CCT in UK are eligible to become a consultant in UK. So that's a process of escalating up your career. So finish my CCT in UK from Manchester DNB. Then again, we kind of never get satisfied, right? Sometimes we want to do more. So the initial plan was to come to India after 4 or 5 years. Then the next plan was to come to India after specialty, which is another 5 years. Then I wanted to do something more. So I wanted to do a fellowship, a subspecialty in part of the gastroenterology, which is inflammatory bowel disease and advanced endoscopy. So in third year of my training, I started exploring other options for fellowship. And one of that was a beautiful fellowship which came up in Australia, Fremantle near Perth, Western Australia. So I took it up. So I was finishing my specialty training in 2008 and accepted fellowship in 2009. So accepted almost more than 1 year in advance.
Yeah.
So the plan was again to come back to India after my specialization. Then suddenly something interesting came up when I was finishing my gastroenterology training. There was a very lucrative job which came up in UK itself because one of the consultant in that region, he was kind of struck off from GMC for whatever reason. So that post suddenly became vacant. So that consultant had a lot of private practice, and also UK there are two types of practices. One is NHS, which is a government setup. Second is a private practice. For example, in US, majority of the practice is private setup. In UK, majority of the practice is a government setup called NHS. Private setup is small, but people who do well in private setup, they make a lot of money. So it's a very lucrative job. So suddenly the job came up, and my program director asked me whether I would be interested to take it up. It was very tempting, to be honest, because it was a very well-established job and a very kind of high-paying job and all. But once I take it up, I was sure that I was not going to come back to India. So that will put everything kind of in liquid form rather than kind of what I've been planning for the last 10 years or so. So I thought for a while, then I said, I decided to stick to my original plan. That was from UK, I would go to Australia for 1 year and come back to India after finishing the fellowship. So I resorted to my original plan. So this is 2009. I went to Australia for fellowship. And by the time I already had one. So my wife is a software engineer. She's not a medical. She used to work for NHS. She's a software programmer in NHS. And we had one elder son at the time, Akshay. So Akshay was around 6 years old at the time, and my wife was pregnant with second child. So again, a lot of confusion whether because the plan was to go to Australia for 1 year,
Yeah.
and then come back to India. So the option was whether all of us stay in UK, take up the consultant post. Sort of one option. Second option was whether we all go to Australia, finish my fellowship, come back to India. Then third option was I go alone, and because setting up a family for 1 year in Australia with pregnant wife and can be very challenging. So the third option was wife with elder son move back to India. I go to Australia for 1 year, come back to India after that. So decide to go to the third option. So wife, my pregnant wife and my elder son, they both moved to India in 2009. I moved to Australia for 1 year of fellowship. It was a very, very tough time for us because wife was pregnant and my elder son was 6-year-old who couldn't understand Telugu much at the time. He couldn't communicate well with grandparents. So wife was on her own here. Of course, I did make 3 or 4 trips in that 1 year to India, but that was very short trips, about 4 or 5 days, 1 week, 2 weeks sort of thing. So, but wife said, "Don't worry, we'll cope somehow." Because the fellowship was very, very crucial for my future career in India, and because there are not many people at that time who have done post graduation and specialty in UK who returned back to India. And even if you consider people who have done post graduation specialty in UK, then a fellowship in some other country like Australia, they are almost non-existent. So I thought that will give me a very unique profile of probably one of the very few gastroenterologists in the country who got experience in UK, experience in Australia, and then coming back to India. So that was a very unique proposition we had. The wife said, "No problem, we'll cope somehow." So she had a lot of courage to take it up and then stay on her own for 1 year. And with the elder one was not easy at the time. Elder one was very difficult child to maintain because he was very, very active. He was not happy for moving back to India. He always wanted to live in UK, but he was 6-year-old.
Yeah.
So we could manage somehow. And then I went to Australia, then came back to Hyderabad in 2010.
No.
By the time wife and kid, they were already in India for 1 year. So I joined them 1 year later.
Got it.
So journey started in 2010 in India.
Got it. So thanks a lot for such a detailed overview. Just maybe a couple of questions that I just want to quickly check there. So the desire of moving back to India was always there, before even leaving India, right? I think, as soon as. So just curious, why such a strong desire? I mean, not like exploring, for a few years and then kind of come back. I think there is this perception, at least, if you start this, consultant role in UK, which sounds very lucrative, then, the chances of you returning back to India might be low, so that's why you're making a decision at that point, not even like, wait for a few years. Just wondering about that, like, the strong motivation and why this perception of, hey, if I take this job, it might becomes much more harder. Just curious what's going in your mind and the thought process behind it.
Mainly, there are 2 reasons why which motivated me to come back to India. One is parents. I was the only son. I have a sister, younger sister, but I'm the only male child. So I was very keen to look after my parents once I come back. That was the first motivation. And second motivation, by heart also, I always felt I'm an Indian and I always feel familiar mingling with our own people and all. So those 2 factors were there in me from the beginning.
Yeah.
But the desire was to pursue higher postgraduate training and higher specialty training. That is the reason to pursue experience abroad and reason to come back. And once I know that once we start working in UK, managing 6-year-old son itself was not easy. So when the children become 10 years and all, it becomes even more difficult to come back. I know a lot of my friends who started working. Once children cross 10 years, I feel it's difficult for them to get adjusted.
Completely makes sense. So it's more to do with the kid than I think from a career perspective. Yeah.
Correctly.
So if we can continue on that, like I think from a doctor's profession, you have worked while you are also doing your post graduation specialization along that, and you have been working in India on a doctor profession for almost 14 years. Is there anything from your experience, from your insights, let's talk about maybe for a doctor profession, how the work culture could be, between India and UK in your case, your thoughts, your insights on that. I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah. So it will be completely different of certain extent, Avinash. There are some similarities. If you work in a corporate hospital in India, for example, there are certainly some similarities are there, but the work culture is completely different. For example, in UK, you work from 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and weekends are off, but you work on call over weekends. But it's something like one weekend in 4 weekends or one weekend in 5 weekends. But in India, you are expected to work from 9 to 9 or 9 to 10 round the clock, and then the weekend starts on Sunday afternoon, not on Friday night. So it starts Sunday afternoon, and then even Sunday mornings we go for rounds sometimes. So I knew that it's going to be long working hours and a little less organized, the working system. But you have a lot of flexibility also. For example, in UK, if the work starts at 9 o'clock, you got to be there by 8:45. If you're there by 9 o'clock, you are no hero. So because everybody will be there by 9 o'clock. So if you really want to kind of impress your boss, impress your colleagues and all, you have to be about 15 minutes to half an hour before the work starts. And that is not there in India. You can be flexible. You can inform patients, will wait. Of course, suffering patients may not be liking to wait, but 5-10 minutes here and there doesn't make a big difference. So in India, if you say 9 o'clock, that means not before 9 o'clock. It is only after 9 o'clock. So that flexibility is there. The system gives you that flexibility. That's from working hours point of view. From patient perspective, the disease perspective, there are certain medical conditions which are more common in UK, certain more common in India. For example, in our specialty gastroenterology, I specialize in inflammatory bowel disease like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. These were thought to be almost non-existent in India in 2010. But in the last 10 years or 14 years, the incidence of IBD has significantly increased in India. And I'm really enjoying my specialty here because when I was moving down, I was not sure whether I should continue my special area of interest or whether I should be changing my special area of interest. So I had interest in both endoscopy procedures and IBD, which I'm fortunately able to continue here. So that is from the disease perspective. From colleagues' perspective and working atmosphere, nowadays there are quite a good amount of people who are trained in top institutes, who are working as your colleagues in corporate hospitals. So luckily, the work culture is not going to be kind of anything different. You'll be more familiar and more friendly working colleagues. As long as you're getting along with them well, you will not have any problem in working atmosphere. The fourth point is the corporate hospital structure. That's where little controversy comes. So there's a lot of perception for people who are returning back to India that the corporates will keep you targets and then you will be pressurized to work and lots of other things. There is a common worry for people who are thinking of coming back to India. I would say that with my experience of 14 years in India, I would say that yes, corporates might have their own targets and other things. But to be honest, I worked in almost 4 hospitals since I moved back to India, Hyderabad. I worked in Medicity Hospital, Global Hospital, Citizens Hospital. Now I'm at Yashoda Hospital, Somajiguda. All these places, what I observed is, as long as you're good at your work, the management knows what you're doing. You don't have to kind of deviate any of the boundaries. You can do a quality practice, stick to your rules, stick to your practice, and corporates will respect that. So, of course, you need to be working harder, you need to be working long hours, but you don't have to deviate any rules. That's one of the misconceptions I would like to clear for my colleagues who want to come back to India.
Yeah. No, thanks a lot for giving that a comprehensive, covering all the points. Along the same lines, are there any insights that you can share from a healthcare in UK versus in India? just in a regular healthcare accessibility, healthcare costs, for people like, just to give a little bit of a flavor, some people who are thinking about a retirement, who have spent a lot of years in abroad, like US, UK, and when they're thinking about retiring in India, they think about the healthcare. That's one aspect. And then maybe something, in general, about like if you have a fever or something that you need to go through, like just to compare and contrast, anything that you can share from your experience, between the abroad, like, UK or US and then India.
Yeah. So there are two aspects to that, Avinash. One is financial aspect. Second is access to healthcare. In people who are living in UK, for example, I take it you wanted to know if somebody worked in UK, not necessarily doctor, somebody UK worked for some time and returned back to India for retirement.
Yes.
How
So this
are
is,
they
yeah, it's not
worried
anything
about their
like a
healthcare
doctor
access?
professional, like a medical professional.
Correct.
So this is for any
Yeah.
common man, in terms of healthcare access, in
Oh,
abroad
yeah.
versus
Very,
India.
very valid point. Very valid point. So I would say that in UK, the cost of healthcare is zero. If your NHS will take care of that. You don't have to spend a single penny to access any healthcare services, whether it's emergency or elective. In India, the cost of getting a good healthcare or quality healthcare is very, very expensive. But the biggest problem in UK and even US, for example, is accessibility. If you want to see a specialist, you got to wait for a few months to see a specialist. And that makes it very, very frustrating for people who want to access healthcare. So in India, you can get a specialist access within few hours. That's the biggest boom our country has, I think. So if you think from that perspective, for example, I'll give you an example. If somebody wants to get an ERCP, which is a specialist endoscopic procedure in UK or even in US, you have to wait for a few weeks. But in India, people come to my chamber by 9 o'clock, get to be seen by me by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, get the procedure done on the same day and go home on the same day. So that's the beauty of our system. So the accessibility is fantastic, but of course it comes with a cost because health insurance is still not widely taken up in Indian population. Of course, if somebody has health insurance, the cost factor is also being taken care. So you have to know whom to approach, which hospital to go, which consultant you need to see. As long as you know that, you can access good, excellent quality healthcare for a price and on the same day or even half a day. So that makes it a lot more, gives a lot more comfort. People, especially who are planning to retire back to India. So don't worry about that. You'll have all the facilities which are there abroad, even better, I would say. But for cost, if cost is not a problem, that will be fantastic.
Got it. So let's switch the gears a little bit. So I know you mentioned your elder son was 6 years old when you made the move to Hyderabad. Just curious, I think you already mentioned that, he's not so familiar with the native mother tongue and, the Indian languages. So wondering like which curriculum he has chosen, after moving back, and how did he cope up with the languages? I know he's 6 years old, maybe he might be flexible, but just wondering like how his journey was after the move.
Very interesting topic, Kevin. So my elder son, when he moved to India, he was 6 years old. So he was not familiar with Telugu language at all. And so we were inquiring schools. Whatever I'm expressing, there's no kind of respect or disrespect to schools. I'm just telling from my experience.
Sure, yes.
Or our experience. So when we moved back to Hyderabad, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan was one of the fantastic schools. Even still, it is a fantastic school. The curriculum they were offering was CBSE. So we thought, okay, that would become a fantastic school. It might suit him well. So my wife did most of this research and all of this. I'm talking on behalf of her.
Yeah.
So we joined him in Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan school. He stayed there for 2 years, 2.5 3 years maybe, but he never ever enjoyed. He was not fitting into the system at all, and he was struggling. So he was not excelling his studies. He was not coping with the friends, and so it was a real struggle. But we were pushing him, saying that this is a good school, you have to adjust and other things. So then we realized, well, He's not going very far. So then we moved him to Meridian School, Madhapur. Again, one of the very good schools. No bias or whatever. And that was a CBSE curriculum. So I think he moved to that school when he was seventh class or sixth class, I think. So even there, he was not enjoying his studies. So he was struggling. He was okay because I mean better than Bharti Vidya Bhavan, but even still he was struggling and all. So at the time, my wife made a very bold move, saying that no, because I think we are thinking from a neutral point of view, which school is better and other thing, but we should think from his angle, what is best for him. So we decided to move him to IGC's Cambridge curriculum. So we decided to move him to a smaller school, which is Rockwell International in Kokapet, where we live. We moved him to Kokapet, Rockwell International. So the moment it happened, something magic happened. He transformed like anything. He moved there in 8th class, I think, or 9th class. Yeah. So he started doing extremely well, both academically and extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities. So he studied there from 9th class and 10th class, then plus 1 and plus 2. That was all Cambridge curriculum. So immediately his grades started to improve, and he scored A plus in all the subjects, and then he became head boy for the school, and he was the captain for football, and then he was playing drums. So he personality completely changed, and we were extremely happy with his progress. So of course, the younger one, by the time younger one was born in 2010, so he was tagging along with his brother, and finally the elder one finished Cambridge curriculum, and when he was in 11th, 12th class, he wanted to pursue higher studies in UK or in USA. So again, we were not sure whether he should go for post-graduation or undergraduation. And but he wanted to pursue engineering side. He didn't want to come into medicine. So finally, to cut the story short, he pursued undergraduation in US. He was interested in UK, US, but finally decided to go to US. So he moved to US and then finished his computer science now, BS in Minnesota, and he passed with honors. And he got one of the highest marks and the grades and other things. So in honors in US, there is a system called, they give summa cum laude, magna cum laude, and cum laude. These are the honors degree. So he scored highest award, which is summa cum laude, and he also got a job now last week. So he just finished graduation. He joined a job last week. So everything went on well. So what people who are relocating our message, only from my experience, is we have to choose which a school based on your child's interest, where he can fit well, and what the school does to him. So a lot of things to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks for giving that. So definitely, I think based on the kid, a particular curriculum could be much more beneficial. It's not only the school's reputation, but also like the mode of teaching and engagement can make a difference. So
what suits him better is what is my message. I mean, the younger one is still in Rockwell International. He's doing well. He's in 10th class, but that's what we should choose a school based on child's interest and child's comfort and all that.
Great. Now, I mean, I think let's talk about the life in India. So you always wanted to move back to India. There is this strong love and with the parents and all that stuff. So how is the life in India after 14 years? At any point, did you feel like you miss living in UK or in Australia? A decade, more than a decade is a long time to experience the culture, to experience, some of the pros and cons of each place. So just curious in terms of the life in India in the last 14 years and anything that you missed from abroad.
So I'll start from your last question, Anash. Not even a single day I missed either UK or Australia. That's for sure. Yes, there are some difficulties in India and which we need to anticipate and overcome. So, I'll take a few minutes because it's a very important question what you asked. When somebody is planning to go to India, we need to imagine the professional life and personal life. And the personal life will be literally compromised in India because of the long working hours, if you want to really stretch that long. But there are people who kind of restrict their hours and then be comfortable as well. So, pros and cons in working atmosphere. The biggest challenge I would come from challenges what you face when you come to India. In my case, at least, I didn't have any family background. We don't didn't have any in immediate family. We never had any doctors. One of my maternal side mother's cousin is a popular doctor somewhere in Karimnagar, and is a very reputed doctor. But apart from that, there's not much of medical support in my family. Nobody were doctors.
Yeah.
And I was away from country for 14 years almost. Because 11 years in UK, 1 year in Australia, preparing for exams and everything. 13, 14 years I was away from the country. So when you come back to India, the biggest challenge for me was how do I get patients? Nobody knows me here because I was away from the country for 14 years. And nobody in the family to support. And my father was an engineer, so he doesn't have any medical background. So how do we get patients? And though you are well qualified and well trained, but people need to know you, right? People,
Yes.
unless people know you, you can't get patients. And I'm not kind of a person who kind of very aggressive with marketing and other things. So I have my limitations also. Though the training and education would help up to certain extent, but you need to be known in the circles. So how do you tackle that? So first thing when my plan was to come to India. So one thing I did in the last 6 years before I returned to India was I was visiting India every year.
Yeah.
When I was visiting a hospital or colleagues or some friends, get to spend half a day with them and then see what is the practice like, so that my thought process would become in line with Indian practice.
Yeah.
That's one thing I did. And when I come back to India, I joined in a hospital. Then I was thinking, how do I get to know in the circles myself? So one of my biggest strengths was academics and training, and I was having passion for education teaching as well. So I thought I should use that my virtue to gain some name in the society. So what I did was I created an education program for medical students, and because first year of my time life in India, I had a lot of time. So I created a program called medical module for medical students. So where medical students can come and attend medical education sessions Saturday evenings and Sunday mornings, which are delivered by different specialists: cardiologists, gastro, nephrology, pulmonology, infectious diseases, all the specialists. I pulled up about 10 specialists. We all used to deliver lectures for the medical graduates. So I run this program single-handedly for about 6, 7 years. So about 2,500 medical students. This all for free. There's
Yeah.
just nominal cost to meet the expenses for the hall and other things.
Facilities.
So about 2,000, 2,500 people, medical students took that program and with a fantastic feedback. And then I was well respected among medical students, and a lot of students got benefited from that. So 2,000 to 2,500 students is not a small number, medical students, because you look at medical college intake, every year each medical college produces 150 students average. And if you're talking about 2,000, 2,500 students benefiting, you're talking about so many years from medical school itself. So I'm in a way feel proud to say that I could help so many medical students. At the same time, I got my name across. I got my teaching abilities come across to so many students, and so my name became very prominent in academic circles. And then group of my friends, one of my close friend and myself, we started a medical academy. Medical student going to UK called MRCP training programs and all. And then soon we got a pool of UK written doctors who kind of pulled up, and we all became MRCP examiners, and then we started conducting exam, and we also brought MRCP. MRCP is a postgraduate qualification in UK. So that UK has overseas exam centers. In India, there are about 5 exam centers. So ours became the 6th MRCP International Exam Center in Hyderabad, which was kind of, we persuaded Royal College of Physicians to come to Hyderabad and set up the exam center. So again, I played a very key role in setting it up. And also in gastroenterology circles, also I was quality of care and education training programs, which I was conducting on a regular basis through medical trainings and all. So what I mean to say is, though I didn't have any medical background in the family, with my academic skills, I could kind of make myself prominent in the field. And luckily, by God's grace, now I become one of the very busy practitioners. And for my work, I'm known across the country for inflammatory bowel disease and some of the endoscopy techniques also.
Got it. So kudos to you. I mean, again, thanks for the service. I think 2,500 is not a small number, and helping them out, and especially creating that awareness and setting up the academy and so on. So maybe on a social life, in terms of the adjustment, anything that you want to touch on that, in the life in India versus abroad, from your perspective.
Yeah. I mean, one thing is for sure that the family life and personal life will be compromised once you come back to India up to a certain extent. And if you want to work really long hours, you will have to compromise your personal and family life. And luckily, my wife was very, very supportive in this aspect, and she never ever complained that I work long hours. And she takes care of home and children. She stopped working once she came back to India. So, but of course, she helps one of the cousins for my company nowadays. And but the software, she kind of left for some time to look after the family and all. So from that angle, I had a lot of support, and I could concentrate wholly on my profession. So when I was planning to come back to India, I was kind of thinking what could the problems or the challenges which I can face, would be facing. And I thought I covered almost everything, the task, except one thing which was a surprise for me is the number of phone calls one receives in India is enormous. I never expected that. So that was very kind of a bouncer for me. The number of patients you call on your phone, if your phone number is available, the number of phone calls you get from colleagues and other doctors is phenomenally high. That's one thing which I never expected. Though I was planning to come back to India for 10 years, so I was kind of taken by surprise. And well, I mean, you can hide your phone number from patients, but at the same time, that will give you a disadvantage in two aspects. One, if you have a sick patient, they don't know how to approach you. And especially if the patient is coming from outside city, they can't access you. That's one thing. And also, in India, whenever somebody is returning back to India, you are expected to move from different hospital to hospital. Based on your career growth and all, you will be moving from hospital to hospital. So unless patients knows your number, they cannot follow you. So you will be losing a lot of patients. So for these two aspects, you need to give your number to patients. You can keep two separate numbers, but you have to give it. And that's one thing which has to be kind of taken care.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that.
And in countries like UK and Australia, or even US, you won't get any calls from patients.
Yeah. There is a system and a process which is different than what it's here in India. So, no, thanks a lot for all the information. To wrap it up, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to bring up, or any advice for the future aspirants from your perspective?
I think we covered most of it, Avinash. And I would say, if you look at the statistics, I would say people who work in abroad, UK, US, and Australia, I would say by heart, around 70% of our people want to come back to India, in my experience. And but among that 70%, finally around 20 or 30% would end up coming back to India for the fear of failure, for the fear of whatever, worry of work culture or whatever. But I would say, if your heart says to come back to India, you can definitely plan. You plan well. You plan your journey at the time of your stay in UK, US, or Australia, and then once you come back, you plan your position, where you want to work in a corporate hospital, whether you want to work in teaching side, whether you want to work in a corporate hospital, the private setup, so private clinic. All these aspects need to be planned. If you plan and take a good advice, talk to your colleagues. And in fact, we set up an organization called RIDA. And my friends, Dr. Kavita Gone, who is a nephrologist, Dr. Mahendra Vaskabhat, who is a physician, and Dr. Santosh Nagati, who is a colleague gastroenterologist, and myself, we all four set up an organization called RIDA, Returning Indian Doctors Association. So now we have about 250 people in our group, composed of people like us who done post-graduation training abroad and return back to India, not only Hyderabad, people across India. And there are people who in the organization who are exploring to come back. So those are also there. So you can contact any of us. We're happy to kind of guide and then suggest whatever we need. So we don't have a kind of a formal website or anything, but we just have WhatsApp group, and it's a very vibrant group. You can contact one of us, and then I can take it from there. And anything else we haven't covered? I think we covered most of the things. And but I'll say, if your heart wants to come back to India, I think you should, provided you plan well, plan your journey. I think about personal life, family life, and work life, and financially plan well. I think you should be able to cope easily.
Yeah. No, thanks a lot, Dr. Kiran Peddi, for sharing your insights, thoughts, especially someone with a medical professional, right? I think from a doctor who has done the post-graduation and specialization, how the life for a doctor is in India, the healthcare differences, your sons, when you change the curriculum, how much he flourished, right? I mean, I think, these are some of the very important topics for any families who are considering to moving back to India. So really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your journey with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me. And any help, I'll be happy to guide any of the people who are coming back to India.
That's great.